should talk about work.
We all love banks. Gotta speculate to accumulate. You must be methodical. This isn't just a dumb crime.
Gotta go in cautious. We're gonna borrow a helicopter from here. All of you will be flying in together.
Questions, comments, concerns?
Welcome to the Monday edition of the Young Turks. It's a new week, and it's a new set of hosts for the first hour, I suppose, since Cenk is not here. Jimmy Dore of Jimmy Dore Comedy. Your country's just not in you.
Yes.
You can get it on everywhere where you get things.
That's right.
iTunes, Amazon.
That's right. People don't know I have a podcast called The Jimmy Dore Show. Check it out. It's the best podcast ever.
I've heard rumors of that, yes. He does have that, actually. He also does live shows. He does shorts. He's very busy. Very busy. I'm here, too, because I wasn't that busy, honestly. They just put me in. But we got a lot of great news for you today. We've got a slight controversy about Jeb Bush that I don't know if we agree is a controversy. Who do Americans trust more on climate change, Fox News or President Obama? That's going to be fun. We've got an argument about women in the military and combat roles. And what's the last thing? Oh,
Christian terrorism?
Christian terrorism. We're going to highlight a couple of groups and talk about why they don't get the PR that the Islamic terrorists get necessarily. But why don't we start off with Mr. Hem? So it turns out that Jeb Bush might have a small demographic advantage when it comes to the race for 2016 for the presidency. Did you know that Jeb Bush is actually Hispanic? Well, don't take it from me. Take it from the man himself. This is according to a 2009 voting application that he did, voter registration. The New York Times released a picture of it. The circle marked Hispanic was checked in Jeb Bush's little application. The next circle said white, not Hispanic, and was not checked. And so you're actually seeing a picture there. Obviously, it's a little bit too small, especially for those of you on mobile, but thanks you for joining us anyway. So, yes, he had marked in 2009 that he was Hispanic. We're going to have a response from Mr. Jeb Bush and his family very soon. But right off the bat, Jimmy Dore, is this a controversy? Because I've seen it it's everywhere today. It's all over the place.
Hey, Jeb couldn't find the right box to check. His brother couldn't find WMDs. They're bad finders of things.
Exactly. They couldn't find, good justifications to go to war necessarily.
I think that this is, if you want to be cynical, but how could you not be with the Bushes, that he did this on purpose because he knows he's going to need Hispanic votes, right? His wife is from Mexico. He wants to endear himself to the Hispanics in America because he's going to run for president. And I just think that that's I wouldn't be surprised if he's leaked that himself, that he did that.
Yeah.
What else? Why else would he do it?
So you're saying
this wasn't a mistake.
You're saying he leaked it knowing that, yes, if it comes out, people will prove that he's not, in fact, Hispanic, but enough people will be fooled and not see the proof?
Maybe it will kind of endear him a little to the Hispanics, and that
he wishes he was Hispanic.
Or something like that. Like, he even considers himself a Hispanic, you know? Because he is the one candidate who's is kind of on the side of immigrants, right? In the Republican field, anyway,
You're
right?
saying in terms of his immigration policy.
Yes, he was the one who said that it's a matter of morality. These people are good people. They're not evil. They're trying to do what's right.
It's a radical position.
A very radical position.
They're not Satan.
They're not. Yeah, they're just people doing what anybody else would do in that situation. So I think that's, if anything, he did this on purpose to try to garner favor with Hispanic voters, and he released it himself. That's not an accident.
Yeah. I don't know. Look, the circles are right next to each other, which raises the chance that it could happen. It could be, I think that you have a point. He could be hoping that it would someday come out and maybe it'll buy him. Or it could be that it's a stupid little joke that he thinks, I'm totally Hispanic. It could just be a little personal joke of his. It's hard to say. We do have a response from him. Let's bring up a tweet you're going to see from Jeb Bush. Let's advance to the next one. My mistake. Don't think I've fooled anyone. That's in response to his son saying, come on, Dad, think you checked the wrong box. Hashtag honorary Latino. Now, of course, his son is half Latino since Jeb Bush's wife is Mexican origin. So, look, that brings up a second interesting point. We have to bear in mind that while I think he's probably likely to get a larger percentage of the Hispanic vote because, as he said, his stance on immigration, he is in a race against both Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, who are not just honorary Hispanic, they're actually Hispanic. And so I wonder, is this going to be enough to stand up against their perhaps more legitimate technical claim to representing that group?
I don't know, but I want to make just to clarify that I don't know if that's what I said before, that he did it on purpose. I don't know if he did. If anything was happening here, which I don't know if anything, he might have. very good chance he just accidentally checked the wrong box. But if that isn't what happened, that's what I'm just trying to put it out there. That's what I'm asked to do. What do you think might have happened? That's what might have happened. He might have been doing it to curry favor for exactly because he's running against two actual Hispanics.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely, like, if he was some, like, sort of no-name candidate, like, nobody's really familiar with him, maybe you could try to, like, sneak by thinking maybe they won't prove it. But the thing is, like, he has the benefit of being a Bush in that he's already expected that he's going to raise an obscene amount of money because of his name. He's got the name recognition, again, because of his name, obviously. But on the other hand, it's hard to really slip past facts about your family. Now, maybe people will think, well, Jefferson, that could be, I suppose. He's from Florida. But he is still a Bush. Like, he was still hanging out growing up with George W. clearing brush and stuff like that in Connecticut, I suppose.
But Marco Rubio did try to push some false facts about his family and when they emigrated from Cuba, correct?
What was that?
He said that, I'll have to double check this during the break, but he did say they came here at a different time than they actually came here fleeing Cuba's Castro. So he got caught on that, but nobody really held his feet to the fire because the meme is out there.
Yeah.
But that they fled from Cuba, Castro, and all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay, one last question that I have for you on this, because many people watching this, like devoted Young Turks fans, are probably thinking, well, doesn't Cenk often say that he has sort of the immunity idol for, like, speaking about the Chinese, because he is married to a woman who is Chinese, he has a kid who is half Chinese. And so, do you think that this sort of honorary status is actually a thing that either does or should influence voters? Like that if you are married to someone of that group, that it makes sense for that group to think that you have, like, their best interest at heart, or that you're more likely to actually help them. I mean, many people said the same thing about Barack Obama, not that he has honorary status, but that, oh, look, he's probably just going to try to help those people out, even though I think many people across the country probably think he didn't actually do that.
You would think that it should get you, but Alan West.
Alan West, yeah.
He doesn't seem to me like he would be in favor of helping the African American community,
probably not.
Right? Or Ben Carson doesn't seem inclined to want to help the problems that face the African American community right now. In fact, he wants to take away health care from them. He wants to get rid of Obamacare. So I don't know exactly. Yeah, it's true. My wife is Hispanic. She's Mexican 100%. So, but should I get a pass? I mean, should that mean that I don't know? Should I get a pass if I say something incorrect or something?
No, not necessarily.
Maybe. Yes, I should. Let me redo that. I think I should.
And finally, the sort of interesting thing is to draw it back to what you said, like his actual stance, or at least what he said about immigration, is the most reasonable out of all these candidates.
Yeah.
So it actually would make some sense if some conservative Hispanics supported him for that reason. And I love the way that you put it, that they're just doing what everyone else would do. And what almost everyone who sees that quote from him and then thinks, well, they should follow the law or something. That's what their family did. They just came over on a boat. They didn't follow the normal. But that's not the way that people think. There's an inherent hypocrisy in that. Okay, let's talk about some other forms of hypocrisy, possibly. Who do the American people trust when it comes to climate change? Do they trust the president, perhaps, the one actually setting the policies? Perhaps Congress, also influencing America's response to climate change? The media, Fox News even. The results are positive and negative at the same time. So overall, this is sort of the headline version of this. While 17% of people picked Fox News as a reliable source on climate change, only 11% selected President Obama, with a slightly higher 13% choosing the U.S. government. So 17% for Fox News, higher than the government, which is higher than President Obama. Now, my immediate response to that is, well, I suppose it makes sense that, that they would choose, the government, when they see the government, they talk about the legislature, they're thinking of it as being conservative. I don't necessarily trust them. So the fact that most people don't trust them, I don't see as a bad thing. Only 11%, which, that, by the way, for the president, means that the vast majority of Democrats don't trust Obama when it comes to climate change. And I wonder, should they? It seems like he's made some good moves on climate change when it comes to emissions from cars and things of that sort, trying to get the treaty with China and a number of other countries.
I wouldn't trust politicians on climate change. I would trust scientists. But they didn't ask that. They didn't ask that in the study. Did they ask that?
They do have that, actually. So we can go ahead to the next section if you want.
Oh, okay.
So that was sort of the bad news, the fact that people trust Fox News so much more than President Obama. But the good news is that they trust certain groups more than both of those combined, which is good. The most reliable source was non-government scientists and educators at 45%. That's That's not even a majority, by the way.
Well,
Goddamn.
yeah.
Followed by environmental groups with 33%, and mainstream media, quote unquote, including U.S. newspapers, broadcasters, CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, the Associated Press, and the New York Times at 22%. So even scientists can't break 50% with the American people.
Neil deGrasse Tyson only registered 22%. 22%.
Yeah.
I bet he's bullshitting about science. He got into science so he could bullshit about it. That's why scientists get into science.
Stuff about the
The people who you can really trust on this, talk show hosts and Republican politicians.
Yeah.
I don't trust. So that's a good sign. But still, what this really shows you, John, is the effectiveness of the disinformation campaign from the fossil fuel industry. This is exactly what happened with cigarettes, or very close to what happened with cigarettes. They're just trying to, the science isn't in. We still have to study. We don't know. And these guys are just saying what their funders want them to say. Yeah, I know. So, so that's disconcerting that they have come this far, and especially over something that's so important. How you can get people to distrust science? It's science.
Yeah.
It's peer-reviewed. It's
not just a study.
Right.
Like millions of studies and investigations of trends in both the short term and in the long term. You can go back 50 years. You can go back hundreds of thousands of years, and they can find evidence that should lead you to believe that something is happening. Something that does not occur cyclically in nature commonly.
I wish they would have asked, do you trust the military on global? Because they are already making plans.
Yeah.
Because they know that global warming is a threat to our security. So they're already putting that into their plans. They know global warming is a huge threat. They've said so.
I think liberals are twisting their arms, I think.
yeah. That's what these guys get in the military. They're just saying,
So the thing that sort of confuses me, and I know that this study, the results of the study, are going to be spread all over the place, and a lot of people are going to say, that tend to support Democrats no matter what. They're going to say, well, look, 11% for President Obama is way, way, way too low. I mean, as I even said, that means that most Democrats don't believe that you can trust him. The U.S. government, which does have still quite a few Democrats in it, not as many as it did a few years ago, but at the same time, like as you said, like, President Obama, he raised CAF standards, so now cars are more efficient than they were when he became president, and they will be more efficient in a few years. He's done some things to spur investment in alternative sources of energy and things like that. I mean, he's fighting against Keystone XL, but even he, who seems to believe that it's true and seems to think that the government has some responsibility to try to change it, he could be doing far more. Certainly doesn't seem to be really leading on this. I mean, blocking Keystone's one thing. Putting into effect billions and billions and billions in additional funding to get renewable energy to a point where it's cost effective against traditional fossil fuels, that's another thing, and I don't see him really doing that recently. And so really, can you blame even progressives for not trusting either side when it comes to this sort of thing?
Well, I don't trust Barack Obama when it comes to climate change, because he's a politician, and in any given situation, he might fudge a little to make his point. Just like he fudged or some people say blatantly lied when he said, if you like your policy, you can keep it. What he should have said was, if you like your policy, you can keep it, unless it's really shitty and we're going to give you a better one. He didn't say that part. So
it is funny that people are hitting him for that.
Yeah.
You can keep it unless it's so horrible.
Unless it's so shitty, it's illegal.
Yeah.
But so maybe that's why people have a hard time with. Plus, it's good to see him, what he has said about the XL pipeline, but he still is kind of wishy-washy. He's not as strong as you'd like him to be on it, that's for sure.
That's true.
And he said the right, so that's why I don't trust him. I'd like to. It's sad that people 45%. I mean,
for scientists.
For scientists. So what do you? I mean, you have to have confidence in certain institutions in your society in order for your society to function. Yeah. And once people lose confidence in your institutions in your society starts to break down, which is what you see happen. I mean, that's why we can't get. That's why Florida's going to be underwater in 50 years.
You're talking about confidence in the church, right?
Yes, I'm talking about confidence in the church.
Moral fabric falling apart.
And Johnny, you can't blame a lot of those people for not believing President Obama. He is black.
That's true. I'm fairly sure. I wouldn't trust him on his racial background, but I do, also, let's remember, 17% say Fox, which means lots of conservatives don't trust Fox. But the takeaway from this for me is that while most people don't seem to trust pretty much anyone when it comes to news about climate change, including scientists, as weird as that is, including Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is probably one of the best known science educators out there right now, that doesn't mean that they don't think that it's something that's happening or something that should be dealt with. They just don't know who to trust about it. And what I'll refer to prove that is 57% of Republicans and 88% of Democrats are somewhat or very concerned about climate change. Now, that is a different thing than are concerned about climate change and think that we're doing it and think we can stop it. That's true. That's a couple steps removed. But it means that there's some fertile ground to talk to these people on. And there's a lot of political issues where, from our point of view for the Republicans, there's not 50%, 57% even chance of discussing it. And so this is a failure on so many different levels when it comes to the media and politicians. I'm not going to blame the scientists. They've been attacked and they don't have the sort of pulpit that the media does. But I think that people are waiting to be taught what's going on when it comes to climate change. They just don't know who to trust on it right now, which is sort of sad.
Well, this goes back to what Ben Mankiewicz has said many times, is that when you sit down to have a discussion about climate change or any other important topic of our day, you have to spend 80% of your time just unwinding the crazy, just unwinding the misinformation and the disinformation, and then so we can agree on a set of facts, so now we can discuss this issue. We don't even agree on the facts, you know? It's like, hey, there's climate change, so what do we do about it? I don't think there's climate change. God damn it, you're kidding me. What do you...
So that's kind of sad. Before we move on to our next story, which we're going to, I just want to give you one other number, if I can find it, and this is positive. At 6% were radio commentators Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh. So that is good news. No, almost no one. I mean, that's barely his audience, I suppose.
That's lower numbers than Dick Cheney. His approval rating, his approval rating, I think, was 11%.
Yeah,
right?
There are STDs.
They're lower
people trust more on climate change than Sean Hannity.
Yes, that is true.
Gonorrhea won't leave me wrong. Okay, let's move on to something different. A new study by the Pentagon shows that both men and women in the military have somewhat grave concerns about the ability of women to be integrated successfully into combat positions in the military. So again, men and women in the military in this survey saying that they think there are significant potential problems to that. This is something that's been going on for a few years. Efforts by the military to conduct additional testing to find out if women can pass the sort of psychological and physical requirements of certain combat positions, including special forces like the SEALs and things like that. Now, Fox News is getting involved in the debate by bringing on two veterans, one on each side of the issue, to debate whether or not women can successfully be brought into the military. Let's go first here is former Navy SEAL Carl Higbie, who does not think that it's a good idea.
And what else?
Well, I think it's what it is it's a political correct push from bureaucrats to try to push more women into a SEAL community that is not ready for it, and I don't think it needs to be there when the lines of margin are so small, and adding another variable of instability is just unnecessary.
I don't know what the lines of margin are, but so he says there's too many variables already. It's a chaotic situation being there in the military. Adding another variable, not worth it. He doesn't really bring up the pros potentially to bringing them in. He doesn't seem to be considering them. It's just not worth it based on added complexity. So we're going to have a response by the female veteran. What are your thoughts?
Female veteran.
Yes, to respond to it. So as I said, they do have someone on the other side. This is a female veteran of the conflict in Iraq.
The number one thing that we have to remember here is that mission success must always come first, not gender success.
Right.
So there needs to be this standard across the board standard that isn't reduced to a gender norm standard in order for women to be able to pass these tests. Women don't want that. Women don't want special treatment in the military. It doesn't do them any favors, and it doesn't do the military as a whole any favors. So I feel with the concerns of those who were surveyed about them being worried that the Pentagon might, cave to political pressure and reduce those standards. That's not what is best for the military at all.
Yeah, so I didn't intro that wrong. She does actually eventually get to defending women's position in the military. That is the pro-women in combat positions, Amber Smith, that they have on the show. But even her, this is basically balanced on Fox News. You bring in the one guy he's gonna say in this next video, they have no place in the military. And then you bring on a woman to defend the position, and she goes on for a minute and a half basically saying, well, I mean, we can't lower standards and women don't want that, and I understand there's a lot of concerns. Like, she's the vigorous defender. This reminds me of Kennedy and Combs.
Yes, very much so. Let's go. Can we just go ahead and let's hear what he has to say?
Let's punch to the third. So here is his response to what she just said. I think we're going to get a little bit more Amber Smith in there as well.
Right, it adds an extra variable of instability, which in a career which has such small margins for error, it just is unnecessary right now. We're successful as an all-male force, and nothing against women, but I think that they don't have a place in there. And I'm glad, Amber, you brought up standards, because as you can see across the military, the standards are different for men and women in all fields, and it's only a matter of time before they push that into the SEAL community.
Well, I think there's no question that the dynamic of a group will change drastically once females are introduced to a sort of all-male environment that's been that way since they were created. But it doesn't mean that it won't work. And I'm sorry, but I don't think that the excuse of disturbing the good old boys club is a valid reason that females should not be able to try and assess for these units if they can meet the exact same standards that men do. I think it really comes down to the maturity and the professionalism of the units.
First of all, she did defend it. So she did defend it. First of all, I thought that guy's hair looked beautiful. The way it was curly and shiny.
Yeah.
But
he almost died on camera right there.
Right there.
Like he was about to fall asleep.
Anyway, so he makes the point that they have different standards for women in all other aspects of the military. Now, since that woman didn't push back against that, I'll have to assume that that's true, that he said that what he said. So, yeah, I can understand the point that, hey, and she even said the mission comes first before the gender equality or gender success. So if women are held to the same standard as men are in a SEAL situation, I don't see what the problem would be. Yeah, I don't think you should lower standards. I always had a problem with lowering standards. I understand that there's certainly a benefit to having diversity in anywhere you are, but at what point does that diversity become a negative if you're not fully qualified? So I think if women are qualified, they should be able to do any job that they're qualified for. That'd be my position.
Yeah, I don't know how prevalent the different standards are throughout the military. But I guess I feel like I got to play devil's advocate a little bit. I mean, I overall think that. So his point was we're doing fine as an all male force. Why throw things up in the air or whatever? And I think it's easy for the group who is included to say there's nothing to be gained. But clearly, people on the other side think that there is. I mean, many would say the U.S. military was just doing fine before it was integrated. Better after integrated, though. I mean, someone could have and did make the argument back then, well, it's doing fine as an all-white force or with just black companies, not integrated. But that doesn't mean that there's no benefit to integrating. And it might be that people are making the case when it comes to like CEOs. Maybe there's something inherently about men that make them more effective CEOs, but also maybe not. Just because companies have done well in the past doesn't mean that bringing women in, even if there's something about them that isn't the same as men, doesn't mean that they can't bring unique benefits to the role as well. I mean, it's one thing to say we have these exacting physical standards that you have to pass. And I think, in general, a lot of people are going to say, well, yeah, everyone should have to pass the same standards. But what if there's other things that they can do or bring that men do not typically bring? That's a possibility.
That's a possibility. And just all I can say is, can you imagine? I have never met a female who wanted to be a Navy SEAL. But just imagine.
Yeah.
Right? Like, she'd be a tough.
Yeah.
You want to fucking... Holy shit,
yeah.
She's, woo.
Yeah. And again, so that's sort of the interesting thing. I mean, so you're talking about, like, how physically imposing she must be, but also, she wants to join. Like, we're a country that, like, if you want to be a part of something, if you want to potentially give your life for the country, the idea of some guy who used to be a SEAL saying, nah, you shouldn't be allowed to, that strikes me as odd. It strikes me as un-American to not even give them the chance. And she brings up and says that she agrees about the standard stuff, but he doesn't. It's not for him. It's not just about the standards. Like, he seems to think, and it goes on. You can watch the full video. It's about a 4-minute interview between the two. That even if they could pass the standards, that's not enough. That they could potentially throw things off in terms of the men being more worried about protecting the women.
They've always said that. Yeah.
Yeah, they do say. So they say, in response, like, what would you feel you have to go protect a woman?
Yes,
men. But don't they say that they don't leave a man behind now?
That's the whole supposed to be the point, right?
They endanger themselves to go save someone. So if you're already doing that for men, what's the difference if you also do that for women? That would be.
I think that's a watertight argument, John. I think you got him.
From a guy who knows almost nothing about the military, I'm sure that it'll be accepted online.
I've been to Afghanistan. I saw a lot of women there when I was there. A lot of women in the military in Afghanistan. I don't know exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they were doing more than I was.
probably still. And I have to point out, as I always do, for those of you on the far right, including, by the way, most people in special forces, like, let's not miss the point that this is not a completely unbiased organization. From everything that I've read, and I've read books about reporters who've been embedded with different branches of the military, including the Army Rangers and things like that. These are incredibly conservative organizations that bring in people who are not just politically conservative, but usually follow pretty hardcore forms of Christianity as well. They have their own stance on gender equality. This is not just a standards thing. And I largely forget what my point is.
Okay, but that was
an interesting point.
That was a good lead up.
Yeah. Now, briefly, before we move on, I do want to talk about this. We've seen recently in the past, I believe it was the past 2 weeks, that the Pentagon announced, oddly enough, considering the discussion that was just going on in Fox, that they are going to be lowering standards for recruits because they're having trouble finding people who can physically do. I mean, we're not talking about the SEALs here. We're talking about the regular, I believe it was the Army.
Yeah, just the regular, right.
But that they might have to lower the standards because of the lack of fitness and the diet of the regular Americans. That's sad to me.
And maybe because after 14, our economy's having an uptick, and there's more jobs, maybe, and 14 years of war, we don't even know what it's. It's hard to get people whipped up
to join in.
It was easier to get people whipped up after you saw a couple of buildings fall down in Manhattan, but ever since then, it's like we find out we're the bad guy half the time, and now we invented Al Qaeda, then we invented ISIS, and then it's all because we invaded Iraq in the first goddamn place, and. Yeah. You know, it's just like people, I don't think people are that gung-ho to get involved anymore. Before you had people who were on professional football teams quitting their job to go fight for our country. That's not happening anymore.
Yeah, that's a sad story. Okay, and then one other final thing. We don't have time to do this as a full story, but I did think it was a little bit interesting. This is another part of their lowering the standards, I guess, or at least modernizing. The military has revised their tattoo policy. So they now will allow, they used to have a cap on exactly how many tattoos you could have in certain parts of your body, and there were parts of the body that you could not have any on. Now, you can have full sleeves, you can have unlimited leg tattoos and things like that. Just not on the hands, except for ring tattoos, and I think nothing above the neck or something like that. Does that seem like, I was raised to think that everybody in the Navy at least had tattoos.
I thought everybody had a tattoo, and again, this is let's do anything except have a draft. Because as soon as we have a draft, war is fucking over. There's going to be protests. The people don't want it anymore. People are going to examine what we're doing. They're going to want to spend less money on the thing. They're going to realize that this is all bullshit. That we're spending billions of dollars for absolutely no reason. Every time we intervene in the Middle East, we make it worse. Every time. Libya, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. We've been in Afghanistan since 2001. We're never getting out of there. We're never going to fix anything. How are we going to fix someone else's country? We can't even fix our own.
A country that was broken in many ways long before we ever invaded it.
Yes.
Yeah, so you think we should?
So we should what?
Institute a draft.
I think we should institute a draft.
Yeah. What's the cutoff for eligibility? Let's wait a couple years and we can institute a draft.
No, you have to. Well, I'm already registered.
I'm registered as well.
Yeah, I registered when you turn 18. I think you have to register with the selective service is what they call it. Yeah. And I think I had to do it when I was in college, or else you couldn't get student loans and stuff. They had it all. I could be wrong.
That's how it was for us. By the way, I love the idea of it being the selective service. Possibly not allow it. Yeah, they're super selective. Oh, before we go to a break, I remember the point that I was going to make about them being conservative. So for the conservatives who think, look, we can't have women in combat roles. That's not their place. They're supposed to be in the kitchen, not in the tank. You also probably support Israel. Israel has women in combat positions. They're military, and they have for a very long time. You seem to think their military is awesome, so why not bring a little bit of that to our military? Perhaps we can be strong, too. Anyway, that's the last point I want to make on that. We are going to take our first break. When we come back, we've got 4 more political stories for you. In the meantime, you should be tweeting us at #TYTLive, and Jimmy and I will read some when we come back from this break. Welcome back to the first hour of the Young Turks. Jimmy and John, we've got some TYT lives for you. I want to read.
That was some nice Caribbean funk we came back to.
Yeah, exactly. That was pretty funky. I love Ja'Cory. It was like that was something from Mario Kart. Definitely brought me back to the Rainbow Road. Nathan Katz says, I just watched last week's episode of the Jimmy Dore Show, and now he's hosting TYT Live, twice the door, double the fun. Pretty disagree. John Connor says, Jeb Bush likes tacos.
I don't get that. I don't understand.
What are you referring to? Let's see. Roar says, if Jeb Bush is Hispanic, has anyone checked his calves for cantaloupes? That is a reference to something from a very long time ago. Geek Girl 3000 says Taco Bell is more Hispanic than Jeb Bush. That's pretty good. Let's see. Funny. Oh, I like this from Jax Varax. He says, I'm tired of the divisiveness of gender, race, etc. being continually used as a distraction of the larger issue, the class divide. And you are right. I think, though, oddly enough, that's one area where the military, there is a divide certainly between enlisted and officers, because generally you need to have graduated from college to be an officer. So generally there could very well be a class divide there. But man, they love bringing in poor people to the military. That's been their hunting ground for a very long time. And at least in terms of being like an NCO or something, I don't believe that class is any barrier to that. So I agree with your point, not necessarily specifically within the military. Let's see, I want to respond to what's then. Yes, I am speaking too fast. I will work on that. And Ray for Madness says, conservatives will say it's a slippery slope. If you let women in, what's next? Opossums? I do love that slippery slope. Okay. Was there anything you wanted to read? I don't know if you had your phone with you. Okay, let's jump back in the news. Got some more stuff to talk about. The right has come under a great deal of fire for its florists and bakers refusing to serve in gay weddings, not making, the floral arrangements and the cakes for same-sex marriages. Now, recently, though, they think that they've come up with a little reverse of that, where they have been discriminated against by a baker, but they might be off on a couple of key facts. So let's talk about the case that we're talking about here. In March of 2014, Marjorie Silva, owner of Azúcar, a bakery, refused to make cakes that included 2 Bible verses. One, God hates sin, and the second, homosexuality is a detestable sin. That's a lot of words to fit on a cake, by the way. It is. The cake design was also to include a portrayal of 2 grooms holding hands in front of a cross with a red X over them. Now, obviously, she did not want to do this. Maybe that's not obvious in America in 2015, but she refused to do it, saying that it was discriminatory. And that's when the right pounced, saying, look, Christians are being targeted in the exact same way. They're refusing to make the cakes that we want to make with the things we want on there. Now, thankfully, the Colorado Civil Rights Division came out and said it is not the same thing. It is not discriminatory because it's not that she refused because of the fact that they're Christians. It's because of exactly what they want on there, saying, in the same manner that she would not accept an order from anyone wanting to make a discriminatory cake against Christians, she will not make one that discriminates against gays. The evidence demonstrates that Silva would deny such requests to any customer, regardless of creed. So, sorry, not sorry, though. This is not the equivalent to attacking the right.
So I thought, again, with the gay cakes, I thought the Republican Party was the party of business. Turns out it's the party of bakers. Right? They always
protect those bakers.
Oh my God, the bakers and the florists. We got to protect the florists from the homosexuals. And I still challenge you. Find me one florist in Indiana who's not gay. I still defy you. Find me one. So who are they protecting?
I don't know.
So no, it's good to see that they don't understand what discrimination is still. And it's not that they don't understand. It's like they want to pretend, right? And it's like that some right-wing guy went to some bakeries and Muslim bakeries and asked them if they would make gay cake. Crowder. Yeah, Crowder.
Yeah.
Like, you guys have nothing. You get to hate the gays. You get to hate them. You don't have to like gays. You don't have to invite them over. You don't have to let them in your house to come to your parties.
Yeah.
And you can call them all the names you want.
Yeah.
But it's really weird.
Get cake.
They get to get cake.
Let them have their cake, and you can hate them too.
Yeah.
How about that?
You can have their cake and eat it too, but it's always uncomfortable when liberals have to explain to conservatives how the free market works, right? Yeah. So the free market, it has to be free and open for everyone in order for it to work properly, which is why corporations are against these stupid fucking laws, because corporations are all about making money and they know how the market works.
Yeah.
And they don't want these stupid laws anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, look, first of all, I want to recognize that Marjorie Silva, good American, like the fact that she refused it. Like, I'm glad, because when you make this sort of stance, like, she's going against a Christian, and the sort of Christian who would come in and try to put that on a cake, he's looking for a fight. Yeah, and so the fact that she stood up to him, I think, is admirable. It's brave. Like, she could have had a ton of hate from her community put onto her. It's possible that actually happened. I don't know in the research that I've done, but at least the court is backing up that something. Secondly, man, that cake would have sucked. Who the hell wants some of that cake? Homosexuality is a detestable sin? That's what you want? Your celebratory dessert? What's wrong with you?
No, it's for Bobby Jindal's birthday party. Are you kidding me?
He probably ordered it himself.
Yeah, no, he supports everything. He supports he supports Jim Crow. That's how conservative Bobby Jindal is. He wants to go back. He wants to eliminate himself from being able to vote. That's what a fucking maniac conservative Bobby Jindal is. He doesn't trust himself. I'm a little dark for my own liking. That's Bobby Jindal.
We have a response, by the way, from the guy, Jack. I don't believe this is his actual name, but the guy who tried to get the detestable cake made.
His last name's off.
It might be. I almost said that live on air. He told ABC7 that he found it offensive the Bible verses were considered discriminatory or obscenities, suggesting that the Bible had been censored from the public arena. You can have your Bible in the public arena. It just doesn't mean that she should be forced to put it onto the cake. Like he's saying, how could you consider that discriminatory? It said homosexuality is a detestable sin. That's not discriminatory. What the fuck is that? What could you put on there that you would find personally offensive?
What if I had a gay Bible that said that Christians suck? Christians suck in airport bathrooms. How about that? I would put that on my cake.
Would he have taken a slice?
So it says in my gay Bible. I have a gay Bible. That's what it says in my gay Bible. Why does it talks about the wide stance of conservatives on this issue? Yeah. So again, this is what the fuck? It's just these people who are such miserable pricks. They have so full of self-hatred. They have to throw it on other people. They're so afraid of modernity. They're so afraid of other people. They're afraid of gay people. Could there be anything sillier to be afraid of? Anyway, so it's again to be really proud of yourself, and it just goes to show you we have a lot of really fundamentalist, backward-thinking morons right here in our own country.
Yeah, not that far away.
And they're heavily armed.
Really, much more than us, actually.
Much more.
The one final comment I want to make on this is, I know I've gotten some tweets saying that, why are you guys focusing so much on the bakeries, the pizza places, the florists that do this sort of stuff? It seems sort of silly. And it is silly. But the reason that I want to focus on it is, I mean, we've seen over the past few years, there's been a lot of progress on same-sex marriage and people accepting the fact that there are gays in this country and they deserve to be treated like other people. Those polls have moved a lot in just a couple of years. But that doesn't mean that there can't be a big backlash or a backsliding. And, like, I mean, Roe v. Wade was how many decades ago? Right. And yet you still have young people who have never lived in a time in which it was illegal across the country to get an abortion. And they are still being driven. Like, that is their political identity, is opposing that. And so it might be that, yes, we've made a lot of progress when it comes to acceptance for homosexuality, but does that mean that we won't have a generation born who still thinks that they need to rally about same-sex marriage 20, 30, 50 years from now? It seems ridiculous and it seems impossible to imagine. And yet, I feel like it could happen. And so I think watching for this sort of thing is a worthwhile endeavor.
And, you know, people will say to me, that's because I will tell people that I'm a non-theist. I don't have any religious theism. Yeah. And they'll say to me, oh, it's so sad you don't have any spirituality. You know, even Bill Hicks was spiritual, which is a comedian. And
super familiar.
And I'm like, you're telling me that people who are religious consider themselves fucking spiritual? I don't think there's much less spiritual than fucking the way people practice their own Christianity. It's all about shame and guilt. I went to Catholic school for 12 years. It had very little to do with spirituality, Johnny. Yeah. It was mostly to do with shame, behavior, brutality, punishment, meanness. It was a bunch of toxic, unconscious emotions that the clergy wanted to fucking throw on you. And that's exactly
because they have it.
Because they, of course, who else is drawn to that job in the Catholic Church? They were closeted homosexuals, guys who liked power. It had nothing to do with. My uncle was a priest. Sad guy. Anyway, so
I like that, toxic, unconscious emotions.
Yes,
that's a good way of putting it.
And that's so when people say religion, not spiritual, the religion I've experienced, and I've gotten a good goddamn look at it. Couldn't be less spiritual. Yeah. So don't try to play this because you say you're in religion doesn't mean you're spiritual. It means that you follow groupthink. Mm-hmm. That's all that means. You follow groupthink and you're okay with it. Doesn't mean you're a better person. Doesn't mean you're more moral. Doesn't mean you've thought about it more than me. Doesn't mean that you've even kind of struggled over it more than me. You haven't. In fact, I think people who are religious don't struggle. I think that that's their I'm not struggling anymore. I've accepted. I'm not questioning. We even know Mother Teresa didn't believe the shit she peddled her whole life. And so that's why I'm very skeptical of people who wear the religion on their sleeve and are publicly religious.
Yeah.
If you're religious, I shouldn't even know it. I should know that you're a Christian by your actions. And Jesus said, you want to pray to my Father, go in the closet and pray.
Yeah, and so many of them have stayed in the closet. And you
I'm
gotta remember
setting you up on that joke.
You gotta remember, for many people, it's something that you're born into, which does not mean that it shouldn't matter to you in terms of your identity, but that's not the same thing as sort of like at 21 going off on a quest to discover yourself. Like, that's a slightly different thing. We don't have time to talk about it. I know. I'm sorry. I just watched Going Clear, the psychology documentary. God damn, that's a good documentary. They did a good job.
You know, ironically, that's the best John Travolta movie in years.
It's not bad, actually. Yeah, I felt a little bit bad for John Travolta after watching that, actually. Not so much for Tom Cruise, but for John Travolta. I felt a little bit bad.
A little bit bad for John Travolta. Me too.
Yeah. Well, what's he been up to lately?
I don't know. I like him, though. I like John Travolta. Hard not to like that guy.
Yeah, there's something about him. He's got that
Tom
charm.
Cruise, easy to dislike.
Yeah, because he's too manic.
He's crazy.
He's too crazy. He's got the charm, too crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to some other crazy people, though. When you think of terrorism, you think of Islamic terrorism. Let's be honest with each other. And it's odd, because there are a lot of Christian terrorist organizations of all sorts of religions, but Christianity, world's biggest religion, has its terrorists. They don't get so much PR, though. We want to correct that. So we're going to be doing a brief overview of just some of the Christian terrorist organizations that are either still operating or have operated over the past few years and have accrued quite a body count of their own. This information, by the way, I want to credit him, was put together by Alex Henderson of Alternet, who did a great job of briefly summarizing a number of different Christian terrorist organizations. We're going to talk about three. The first is the Army of God, a network of violent Christians that has been active since the early 1980s. The Army of God openly promotes killing abortion providers, has included multiple convicted terrorists and murderers amongst its ranks, and advocates for the killing of homosexuals. Now, this is especially relevant in the American context because we have people like Eric Rudolph, John Salvi, we have a number of people that have made news, the killer of George Tiller, who were members of that organization.
Killed him in church. Went into a church to kill him in front of other people worshiping Jesus, the Prince of Peace. They went and killed him because that's what Jesus would want you to do.
Yeah,
That's
well, he's so focused on peace that we need to take care of the killing for him.
Yes.
He'll never get around to doing it.
He's too busy helping people. He doesn't have time to kill any.
Yeah. Who is he going to unmaim if we don't maim people?
The guy who wiped out the whole population of the earth with a flood just couldn't handle one doctor in Kansas. He needed,
he needed assistance. He needed a hand like Vader. Okay, the second is the Eastern Lightning, which, by the way, that's a pretty badass name. Also known as the Church of the Almighty God or the Church of the Gospel's Kingdom. It is a Christianist cult with an end-time apocalyptic focus. This is in China, by the way. Eastern Lightning believes that the world is coming to an end, and in the meantime, its duty is to slay as many demons as possible. That is not metaphorical. They identify people that they see as being demons and beat or even kill them. And historically, they have killed a number of different people in that context, also Christians. The second one is the Lord's Resistance Army. You might have actually heard of this one thanks to the Kony campaign. Founded by Joseph Kony in Uganda in 1987. It's called for the establishment of a Christian fundamentalist government in Uganda. The LRA, according to Human Rights Watch, has committed thousands of killings and kidnappings.
Thousands?
Yes.
Thousands.
That's a lot.
How many people died in 9/11?
Thousands.
Oh, okay. So that was a Muslim fundamentalist
Yes.
terrorism, and this is Christian fundamental terrorism. And how many did they kill?
Thousands.
Also killed thousands.
Yes.
Still, Muslims
Not
are worse.
the same.
I still think the Muslims are worse. You know why?
Why is that?
Because I don't know any.
No
That's
idea
why.
but they seem
Don't like them. I've met Jen's dad. He
intense.
still seems very scary to me.
exactly. Yes, I'll be in a room with him, but not with my back turned.
No. You watch out. He's going to cut your head off.
Exactly. And the scary thing is that we have this thing in this country where it doesn't matter if you're from Africa or if your ancestry's from Africa and you say that you're a Christian. Nope. I get to declare that you're a Muslim. For some reason, yes, you can't be a Christian and come from Africa specifically. I'm referring to both Kony and Obama in the same sentence, which is probably going to put me in some trouble. So look, this is just three. There are many. Obviously, some much larger than others, some that have committed more acts of terror and murder than others, obviously. And yet, you don't hear about these. And even when an individual who might associate with one of these groups, like with Army of God, We've had numerous instances of domestic terrorists coming from that organization in America over the past 2 decades. You don't hear about their affiliation with these groups. And if somebody talks about it in the news, then it's being anti-conservative, being biased against conservatives or against Christianity.
I mean,
that's interesting.
Didn't you do a story? Didn't TYT do a story recently that some of the people we've trained to fight ISIS in Iraq are doing exactly the same kind of thing, cutting people's heads off and putting them on their tanks and stuff like that? Right?
They're on our side.
They're on our side.
Yes.
Doing the same thing. Didn't get as much press in America.
No.
You know why? I don't know any Muslims.
Don't know.
That's I don't trust. I don't like them. I don't trust them. It's the whoever the military industrial complex needs to have as a boogeyman.
Yeah.
So we spend way more money fighting something that doesn't have any These guys don't even have a fucking plane, and we're sending soldiers and billions of dollars to fight them in the Middle East. Do they have a jet, John? Does ISIS have a jet?
They physically have jets. I don't know that they can actually operate them. Well, but they can capture some.
Maybe they captured a few jets. I mean, it's ridiculous. This is nothing more. Right. So what we're doing here is showing there's a lot of Christian fundamentalist maniac terrorists, right? Killing thousands of people, but we don't get the press here because, I don't know, maybe, I'm going to just put a guess that maybe the press here is white and Christian. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, and look, many people are going to say, well, look, most of the press, probably atheists. That's true, but they still were mostly, I would assume, brought up in Christian households, and you retain some of those biases even if you no longer personally associate with the religion or see yourself as being a member of it. And I wonder if it's going to change. Like, you had, in the years before 9/11, you did have acts of Islamic terrorism. And I think that it was very easy in the media, even then, before 9/11, to demonize Muslims. You saw the period in Hollywood where they were the villains.
It went from Russians. It went from Russians
exactly.
because then we became friendly with Russians.
Yeah.
We got to find another bad guy. We found him.
Let's go back to Russia.
We found it. It was Russians, but then they were fighting against the Russians. They were our pals
during the 80s.
And then as soon as we became pals with the Russians, turns out we don't fucking like you guys anymore. We're gonna have to go give us all those weapons back. We don't want to give them back. All right, we'll just kill you. And that's exactly what we're doing. How do you know they have those weapons? We looked at the receipt.
Do you see it changing? I mean, I wonder.
No.
There are fewer Christians in America every year than there were the year before. That's a trend that's continuing. It may stop at some point or reverse.
I can't believe.
Is there a threshold at which we can critically look at a person's terrorist organization, regardless of religious identification? I wonder. Is it 50%? Is it 20%? Like, if somebody blew up a building in America and they were hardcore Buddhists or Hindus or Jains or they identified with Shinto, like, we would identify that as being part of their identity.
Right.
But still,
not. Timothy McVeigh never even went to church.
We go beyond that. We don't just not identify it. We take the organizations inside of the FBI that are tasked with investigating domestic conservative extremist organizations, and we disbanded them. Preemptively, we disband it. I don't know if that's going to change, but I feel like we probably should look into it.
So I would like to, make the point that people want to. Right now, there's a big push to say, hey, we need to focus everything on Muslim terrorists, and they're the worst thing in the world. And aren't they worse than Christians? Aren't they worse than Jews? Aren't they worse than Buddhists? I had a guy say to me, hey, would you rather have a country run by Buddhists have a nuclear weapon or a country run by Muslims have a nuclear weapon? I go, I don't know. I wouldn't want to have a country run by Christians have a nuclear weapon because they're the only ones who fucking dropped one. Yeah. We dropped 2 of them, by the way, and we didn't need to. Iraq invasion, and he said, I asked my heavenly Father. And then he called it a crusade. So here we are, a Christian guy invading another Muslim country, killing hundreds of thousands of people, ordering torture and war crimes to cover it up. But because here's the big difference. Terrorism is the violence of the weak, and we condemn it. War is the violence of the strong, and we glorify it. Which is why when I go to the Rose Bowl, I have to watch a fucking B-1 bomber fly over, and everybody salute and cheer it. A fucking weapon of death. Everyone's, yeah! Okay, it's because that would... you cheer a jihadist with a pipe bomb or a suicide bomber? Because that's their war. Terrorism is the war of the weak, and a conventional war is the war of the strong. And that's all. So don't quit pretending we're different. We're not. We kill way more people. We've killed way more people. So this bullshit that somehow we're going to be angrier or more scared of Muslims than Christians, fundamentalism is an illness that affects every religion. Right now we've got Buddhists. Buddhists are cutting people's heads off, right? We've covered that story. So, anyway, I just want to say that. I could talk about this all day long, but this, I don't know what it must make people feel better to think my group is better. The group I'm a part of, the Christian white people in America, couldn't possibly be as crazy as those motherfuckers in ISIS, except that we are, because we fucking almost invented ISIS, right? We wouldn't invite. They're a result of us invading Iraq illegally because we talked to our Heavenly Father and we set up torture rooms and rape rooms. I'll stop.
Yeah, I mean, look, people defended Penn State. Like that's a sport, and they can't allow any criticism of it. Imagine if something that your family going back 20, 30 generations has been a part of. People are going to defend that to the bone, regardless of the evidence.
I never really looked up World War II and the nuclear bombs. I never looked into it. I just assumed that we had to drop them, or else why would we drop them?
There's some debate.
So I didn't even know there was really a debate. And then this guy sent me an email, and I'm like, well, maybe I should look. Maybe Muslims are worse than us? I don't know, but let me look into World War II, because I found out everybody got upset that ISIS put a guy in a cage and burned him to death. That was like, oh, how could he do that? You're not supposed to burn someone to death. And then I found out we burned people to death during World War II all the time.
Yeah. With bombs called fire bombs.
Fire bombs. We firebombed Japan. Flamethrowers.
But like I've read before, flamethrowers are useful if there's somebody who is far away that you really want to be on fire.
Yes.
But I'm not going to walk over there.
So I'm just looking into it now. I haven't done all my research on the nuclear bomb, but it turns out, from what I've looked at, that Japan was ready to surrender, and the only thing that they wouldn't give up was their emperor. And we said, give up your emperor. And they said, no, we're going to nuke you. They still never gave up their emperor. It'd be like us giving up Jesus Christ. So they're never going to do it. And by the way, MacArthur said we needed their emperor to be there so he would tell the people to follow our orders, which he did.
Yeah.
So we got the same deal after the nuclear bombs than we would have got before the nuclear bombs. And then we just fucking nuked people.
Yeah. Well, I wish that we could talk about this longer, but if we go on much longer, Anna Constrain will nuke me.
Okay.
And so we got to cut it short. But before we leave, where can people see more of your work?
Please check out my podcast. It's The Jimmy Dore Show. Oh, I have it right here on the TYT Network, The Jimmy Dore Show, TYT Comedy.
Cool. Okay, that was the first hour. When we come back, Anna Kasparian will be taking over, and it is going to be an awesome second hour. See you in just a few.
welcome back to the Young Turks. Anna Kasparian and John Idarola with you. You know what to do during the breaks. Use hashtag TYT Live. We will read your tweets. If we like them, we will read them on air. And you will like it.
If we don't like them, we won't read them on air, but I will cry.
Yeah.
But I have to be strong.
I'll read them. I won't cry, but then I'll swear that I'll never look at Twitter again, only to look at it 2 weeks later and then make that decision all over again. Anyway, we have some great stories ahead for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the first hour with Jimmy and John. Now John is joining me for some. It was alright. Second hour is definitely going to be better. I won't say. All right. Well, let's get right to it. Let's get started with a bunch of updates on stories that we've covered earlier this year. The first one being the Rolling Stone UVA story. Columbia University has released a report on the Rolling Stone article on the alleged University of Virginia rape, and they have noted that that article, written by Sabrina Rubin Erdley, was a journalistic failure that was avoidable. Now, just to fill you in on some details on that story, it was a very, very long feature story in Rolling Stone magazine where they talked about an alleged rape victim under the name Jackie. Now, that was a pseudonym for the girl. I am not going to reveal her real identity here. I'm not even really sure what her real identity is. But nonetheless, the article had many, many massive journalistic errors in it, including the fact that it was reported with only one source and one perspective, and that was the perspective of the alleged victim, Jackie. Now, the ringleader of this rape that occurred at a fraternity, Phi Kappa Psi, was apparently someone who didn't even exist, and all it took was a little digging for the reporter to figure that out, but the reporter didn't do the necessary digging, which is why Columbia has released this report and called the report, or the article in Rolling Stone, a journalistic failure. Now, let me give you some more from the Columbia Review. The failure encompassed reporting, editing, editorial supervision, and fact-checking. The magazine set aside as unnecessary essential practices of reporting that, if pursued, would likely have led the magazine's editors to reconsider publishing Jackie's narrative so prominently, if at all. So Jackie had alleged that she attended a fraternity party and someone, the ringleader in this case, led her up to a room where she was allegedly raped by 7 people. Now, a lot of her perspectives were actually conflicting with the testimony of other people, but the unfortunate thing about this article was that the testimony of other people wasn't even included. In fact, it wasn't even acknowledged or even considered for the article, which is why Columbia wrote such a scathing review of what Rolling Stone published.
Look. Oh, that's great. Like, you actually teach journalism at a university. I am not a journalism student. I didn't do it in college. I don't consider myself a traditional journalist. But even I've watched Newsroom. I know some of the most basic things you're supposed to do. And they always stress you have to have multiple reliable sources. How could you go? Like, such a big case, such an obviously high-profile, important case targeting a university, when this is something that the country was so focused on, was the perceived lack of response by universities to people who've been sexually assaulted, to just go based on one person's word seems insane. And I could understand it. Maybe it was a one-person operation and she wanted to get the story out, but that it made it through what are supposed to be other checks and balances, and it was not stopped along the way. It's crazy.
It seems as though there were no checks and balances. And remember, it wasn't Erdley working alone in publishing this article. There were editors who also read it, who greenlit it, and published it. And so there was obviously an issue with the way that this article was written, but the system in place to fact check it and publish it obviously had some issues as well. So my biggest issue is not only that this is an article that I think defames an entire university, an entire fraternity. My issue with this is the fact that it calls into question any type of rape allegation that's made by anyone, especially when it comes to a university setting. There are numerous stories that are similar like this, where a girl claims that she went to a frat party and then she was raped, right? And I guarantee you that the majority of those stories are true.
Yeah.
But you hear things like this, and then all of a sudden everyone's skeptical. And so she's not, the article and the reporter here is not doing anyone any favors by not taking into account the perspectives and the facts that other people have to share. It's really a big issue.
Yeah, I mean, it seems crazy, but we experience this all the time in the comments. Like, there are rape apologists out there who just desperately wanted this to happen because they want you to believe that 80% of the women who say they've been raped are lying. Some percent do lie. I don't know what the percent is. I know that it's not more than 50% or whatever it is that they say it is. And this gives them, they will cite this for the next 50 years. They will continually say, well, look, you can't trust them. And that's why they had to be so careful. Look, it's Rolling Stone. I know it's not the New York Times or something like that, but they're still seen as a reputable source for stories of this sort. I don't know how they could have possibly let this through. The idea that the fraternity wouldn't have pushed back, that the national fraternity that represents them wouldn't, that the university wouldn't have pushed back, and especially at a time when it seemed like there was enough public pressure to get universities to start doing something about this. I'm not saying that this is going to derail all those efforts, but it certainly hurts the effort to get them to take it seriously.
There's no question about that. And, you know, in terms of Rolling Stone being a reputable source of news, I mean, you have people like Matt Taibbi writing for them. And Matt Taibbi has written some incredible pieces when it comes to the financial sector and some of the terrible things that they've done to violate, you know, the financial system and all of that. So there are articles that are published there that are worth reading, and they are credible. But when it comes to this specific article, Erdley did a terrible job. Her editors did a terrible job. And I'm glad that the Washington Post did an investigation into this, and they figured out, hey, you know what? They're only taking Jackie's testimony into account, and that's a big issue. Now, let me give you some more from Columbia's review. The published story glossed over the gaps in the magazine's reporting by using pseudonyms and by failing to state where important information had come from. So the Charlottesville police, after conducting 70 interviews, already concluded last month that there is no evidence to support Jackie's claims in the article. So Washington Post did their investigation, Columbia did their investigation, police in Charlottesville did their investigation, and so it seems as though huge portions of this story were made up.
Do you think that it's like professional laziness? Like they said that they tried to contact the 3 other friends, but then eventually gave up? Or do you think it's that, in this case at least, they just put too much trust in, like you don't want to be the person who questions someone who says that they were raped? Do you think it's that sort of thing? Like there's a stigma against questioning that?
I think that it's a combination of many things. I think that there was a lack of journalistic integrity and ethics here. And I also think that there was a little bit of fear in questioning an alleged rape victim too much. And Jackie, in this case, was not easy to work with. Erdley would lose contact with her because she would just disappear. And it was really frustrating. So at one point, Erdley wanted to know the exact name of the alleged ringleader of this rape. And when she said, I need to know her name, or his name, I apologize, Jackie just disappeared for a few weeks. And then Erdley finally got back in touch with her and said, okay, you know, we're trying to publish this article, so I'm going to go with this pseudonym. And after that, Jackie apparently was willing to work with her again. Right there, there's a huge red flag. Why is she losing communication with you when you're asking her a very legitimate question about this alleged rape? And then her friends weren't interviewed for this article. There were people that should have just been interviewed for the article, and they weren't. And so there was laziness and a lack of ethics there. Anyway.
I mean, I feel bad, obviously, for the frat, who didn't deserve to have their name tarnished for a while before the retractions. But also, perversely, someday a sexual assault is going to happen committed by someone in the frat. Are people going to believe it? I mean, this is a major university. Since this report happened, women and men, but especially women have been sexually assaulted at the university. And you know that there was probably a second thought or jokes made at their expense. Like, it's so terrible on so many different levels. And so far, nobody's losing their job or anything. I'm not the person to push for people to lose their jobs, but in this case, I can sort of understand how that might happen.
I totally agree with you. I feel sick saying this person should lose their job, but I just know that in most settings, when it comes to a reputable news source, if someone shows this level of negligence in a story, they usually do lose their job. So I don't know how this is going to end up.
Unless they're Bill O'Reilly.
Unless they're Bill O'Reilly. Then you can lie as much as you want and get away with it. Exactly. But remember, it's not just Erdley. It's the editors as well that greenlit this story. All right. Well, let's move on to something different. It turns out that discriminating in this country could be big business, especially if you have supporters that are willing to set up a GoFundMe page for you. Now, one florist by the name of Baronel Stutzman apparently told a same-sex couple that she was unwilling to provide flowers for their wedding. This happened in the great state of Washington, and she did this to a regular client of hers, someone who had come in quite often. Now, Stutzman, a Christian, refused to sell flowers for the 2013 wedding of a longtime customer, Robert Ingersoll, and his partner, Kurt Breed, for religious reasons. Now, Robert said he decided to get married, and before he got through, I grabbed his hand and said, I am sorry, I can't do your wedding because of my relationship with Jesus Christ. So that's what she had said to him. Now, apparently, Washington State is very different from Indiana. In Washington State, you can't discriminate against clients or customers because of their sexual orientation. So as a result, she was fined $1,000.
Yeah.
This became a national headline, and it started this whole war against the non-religious and the religious, right? So first, let me tell you what Robert had to say about getting rejected by the florist that he had been going to for quite some time. It really hurt because it was somebody I knew. We laid awake all night Saturday. It was eating at our souls. There was never a question she'd be the one to do our flowers. She does amazing work. So
they still support her.
They still support her. I mean, it's incredible. So she gets fined $1,000, and then religious individuals who think that she should have the right to discriminate against those because of their sexual orientation set up a GoFundMe website for her. We have the picture for you. It's graphic number 6. And so right there you see that they raised over $94,000. Well, I checked this morning to see what the number was, and it was up to $104,796. Okay.
So she put in basically $1,000 in court fees and got $104,000. Normally, you need to buy a politician to get that kind of return on your investment. $104,000, and you've reported recently that the pizzeria made well over $500,000.
Yes. So let's go to graphic number 10. This is amazing to me. No worries. Graphic number 10. Memories Pizza. So far, they've raised $842,442.
Country.
Nearly $1 million.
Fuck. Okay. Well, apparently there was $1 million that people did not need. You're Christian. You're supposedly, obviously, Christianity is super important to you. This family had a business that they closed down for a few days. I'm sure they got a lot of hate mail or something like that, but they're going to open back up and start selling Neapolitans again. Mm-hmm. There are people in your neighborhood that are homeless, that are starving. You could buy them a jacket or a meal or something like that. Instead, you give it to a family that is so financially secure in their business that they can afford to make grand political statements. That's insanity. What is wrong with this country?
So I was torn on this story at the beginning, but now I think I have a pretty clear perspective on it. At first, yeah, it made me upset because you realize that there's a huge chunk of this country that is in favor of allowing businesses to just straight out hate and reject people based on their sexual orientation. Those are businesses that I have no desire to go to, and I won't go to them, I won't give them my money, I have no interest in them. But that's my form of speech, right? These GoFundMe pages are a form of speech by Christians or religious people in the country. And if they want to give their money to these businesses, of course it's their right to do so. Am I angry about it? I'm annoyed by it. I hate that, that kind of speech in this country gets rewarded because people agree with it and they think it's okay. But it is what it is. If people want to give their money to these businesses, do you? My way of handling the story is taking note and realizing I have no interest in going to these businesses. I have no interest in going to the states that allow businesses to do stuff like this.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like people to waste their money. Like even like things like Cards Against Humanity expansions. Like you don't got to kickstart that. But yeah, something. How does it matter so much? Like imagine. Sorry, I know we're going over. Sorry, but if you're the florist and you say I can't do your wedding because of my relationship with Jesus Christ. Let's say you do it, and you were wrong. You shouldn't have done it. God actually does care. Who would be more likely to forgive you for that mistake than Jesus Christ? According to everything you say about him, he seems like the forgiven type. You can afford to make a couple of errors when it comes to making bouquets, I think.
I think so, too.
And again, people you've known.
As we know from reports that we've done previously, oftentimes when it comes to religion, when they cite their religion in order to reject or discriminate against people based on sexual orientation, they don't take into account the other sins that everyday people are guilty of, right? So people who have divorced, are you going to provide services to those people? Usually they say yes. People who have cheated, people who have been dishonorable to their parents. I mean, these are all people who have eaten shellfish, like whatever. All these
Coveted the neighbor's ass, perhaps.
maybe
They would give them flowers.
right? Or what about those who refuse to turn the other cheek?
Mm.
Do you provide services to them? So there are all these like double standards,
Yeah,
and
totally.
in reality, religion is used as an excuse to carry out your own agenda. And in this case, at this point in the country, the agenda for some religious people is to just hate and discriminate against gays. I don't support those businesses. And for those who want to throw their money away to these businesses, you have the right to do it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
God, almost $1 million for Memories Pizza.
Yeah, this is America with the expanding wastelands. The only thing more popular than pizza is homophobia.
Yeah, amazing.
That.
All right, another update to a story. This one is a doozy. A while ago, there was a video featuring a California Highway Patrol officer beating a black woman on the side of the freeway. Now, the video featured a woman by the name of Marlene Pinnock. Apparently, she has a mental disability, and she was on the Santa Monica freeway for some unknown reason when the cop tried to stop her. But I want you guys to watch it for context, and then I'll give you an update on what happened in this story.
Oh my God, he's grabbing her. Oh my God. And then they say police brutality. Arrested. Stop. Oh, he is being yo.
Gosh, why?
Is that a cop? No, he's just holding her down. He can't. I'm watching this.
All right. So as you can see from the video, the woman was not armed. She was not a threat to the police officer. He started beating her while he was unprovoked. And so this story went to court, and it was a civil rights case that ended with a settlement. So let me tell you the details on that. Apparently, the woman was represented by a lawyer by the name of Harper. Harper actually ended up securing a settlement in which the officer resigned, and the CHP gave her client. Now, the story continues with a lot of drama because it turns out that the lawyer's fees in this case have raised red flags, especially with the judge who made the ruling in this case, or who was overlooking the case. So a federal judge overseeing the case has questioned whether Harper's $625,000 fee was excessive given the amount of legal work she did. The judge also raised questions about whether Pinnock, given her mental health history, was competent to agree to her deal with Harper without a conservator present. Okay, so the judge here is Otis D. Wright III, and he grilled Harper about the issue in early March, and when he concluded that she wasn't answering his questions, held her in contempt and sent her to jail for 2 days. So the judge in this case is not messing around.
Yeah.
He thinks that fee is too much, and apparently the lawyer was unwilling to cooperate with him when he was questioning her. But first, let me let you jump in. Tell me what you think about this.
Yeah, so, I mean, I haven't been involved in any large lawsuits. I didn't know about how significant the difference was between the deals in which you give some money up front and then a smaller percentage of the eventual settlement if one comes, versus them basically signing on just in the hopes that you'll get a settlement. The percentages they get, though, are insane. I understand for some super high-profile cases, you might have a team of lawyers, all of whom have very expensive educations they have to pay back. But in her case, that seems like a pretty easy case to win. Maybe I don't know much about law. Mm-hmm. For him to need such a significant portion of the total return, of the total settlement, it seems to an outsider difficult to understand.
It seems difficult to understand. And so, in some cases, a lawyer's fee could be as high as 40% of the settlement, or the amount awarded to the plaintiff, right? Yeah. So in this case, it was about 40%. So let me break down the numbers for you guys. Let's go to graphic number 19. Harper received $625,000 as part of the settlement, but gave Pinnock $25,000 of that in cash. So Harper's take was ultimately 40%. So that's not really that unusual. But the question is, did the lawyer in this case do enough work to justify that fee? And the judge does not think so. So let me tell you what the judge found. The CHP beating case took less than 3 months to settle. In court, Harper said she didn't do any depositions, didn't do any discovery or evidentiary work on the case, and saw the video on television like many millions of others. She said her client is mentally capable when on medication. So the judge is saying, look, you barely did anything, and you are taking a 40% fee. That is ridiculous. And he also had a really big problem with the fact that she was unwilling to answer his questions because he just wanted to dig deeper and see whether or not it makes sense to pay her that amount of money.
Yeah.
And she immediately got defensive, and so that raised some red flags for him. Now, another wrinkle to this story is actually Pinnock's aunt, who kind of testified against the judge in this case, which I thought was interesting. So the attorney Harper, put Pinnock up in a new apartment, paid for new clothes, her food, and her medication, all out of pocket, said the woman's aunt, Brenda Hall Woods. So this case is not a black and white matter. Obviously, there are nuances here that we don't even know the facts of. But it is kind of interesting that this case ends in a settlement, but even with the settlement, there's still so much drama involved.
But, I mean, I would have to imagine that anytime you have millions of dollars changing hands to someone who previously had almost no money of their own, like, somebody's going to come looking for the money. In this case, it's the lawyer, I suppose. I would have normally assumed the aunt would be trying to get a cut of her own. I mean, look, the overall good point is that, or the good side of this, is that she actually got that much money. I mean, the cop felt so secure in how he behaved on the job that he was willing to beat a woman while being surrounded by traffic in an age in which every single person you see has a high-definition camera on them. And he still felt secure to do that. So the fact that she got the money is the good news. Once it gets into the area of exactly how it's going to end up breaking down, I would like, obviously, for her to get as much of the money as possible, but at least she's getting hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I think that is also a very important part of the story, but another thing to take into consideration is that this attorney successfully got the CHP officer to resign.
That's true.
And that's going to prevent future cases of police brutality with this guy's blood on his hands, right?
True. Literally.
And so, exactly. So it makes me good to know that there are good outcomes to it.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not enough of an expert to comment as to whether or not 40% is a justifiable fee for this woman.
We'll ask Cenk tomorrow.
We'll ask Cenk tomorrow, and Cenk
The lawyer.
will probably say no. Cenk will probably say $1.5 million. Are you guys crazy? That's too much money. But nonetheless, it ends with a little bit of justice, and so I think that's the happy note that we can take from the story.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to talk about some corrupt police officials in San Francisco, and then later on in the story, what did Chris Wallace have to say about Kelly Clarkson? It drives me mad, so you want to stick around for that.
Disney.
to the Young Turks. I have some TYT live tweets to read to you. But first, a question. Who's directing and producing today?
I'm curious, because the music's been pretty funky.
Yeah, I know that Mike Shekels is back there, correct? Can we get some video action?
Oh, I think we have our new employee, actually, I believe, is back.
Oh! I have not met
I could
this
be
new
wrong.
employee. Video action back there? No? Yes? Camera? There's no camera?
There's no
Okay.
camera. No. All the
Anyway.
cameras are on us, as it should be.
Okay, fair enough. Alright, guys, so what are the TYT lives? Bree Hood says, don't know why Anna focuses on negative tweets, then hates on Twitter. Surely she receives a ton of positive tweets. Hashtag just curious. I get positive tweets too. But it's just human nature. You don't focus on the positive ones as much as you focus on the negative ones. So you'll read like the few negative ones that are so fucking idiotic and they misconstrue what you say and you just want to
like go on a highway and just get on top of them and start beating them.
I'm looking out for my mental health, man. I
You have to.
I realize that every time I check social media, I'm just in a terrible mood. And I don't want to be in a terrible mood anymore.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. Alright, Ray for Madness says, you know how the saying goes, the Rolling Stone gathers no facts. Clever. Jeff Waldorf says, it's sad to see that bigotry still pays in America. Very, very true.
It's a lot more than doing online video. We should start offending more people.
I know, seriously.
I've got a list of 5 groups I will no longer allow to be on my show. Give me monies.
And then 2 more. Ruth Iverson says, preach it, Anna. If you won't make cake for one sin, no cake for anyone. And then John Connor says, I refuse to recognize Anna as she lives in sin with her boyfriend. Hashtag GoFundMe. LOL. Hashtag TYT Live. No, I was just talking about this.
Give him money.
I was just talking about this with John earlier. Living in sin is so good.
I mean, any sin, but if you can live with it too, living in sin.
I mean, I'm splitting my rent. I wake up next to a hot Cuban guy every morning.
Yeah. Yeah, I rent that shit, but yeah.
Anyway.
You gotta get out after noon. No. Yeah, it does sound good.
Yeah. Alright.
Me and my dog, we commit all sorts of sins. But not like not like that. That's not like that.
We'll talk about that in the post-game show
He's
today.
a good dog.
Alright, so if you're a member, you want to check it out. Alright, let's go to some more stories. A number of San Francisco police officials have been suspended for text messages that they were sending themselves between 2011 and 2010. Some of them may lose their jobs, and one of them has already resigned. Now, these text messages included racial texts and also homophobic texts, which is interesting because one of the police officials involved is actually gay, and at one point was on the cover of Advocate magazine. Now, we'll get to that in a second, but let me give you some examples of what they texted to one another. And by the way, these text messages were uncovered after officials were actually doing an investigation into one police official that they thought might be involved in corruption. So here's the thing. If you're a cop or if you're a public official of some sort, some way, somehow, people are going to read your crazy text messages. Keep that in mind. Now, the term white power is alleged to have been used multiple times. All right, that's
Wait, but in what context?
True. I mean, I think that we might be jumping the gun on this. Well, let me give you some more facts. One text reportedly reads, all niggers must fucking hang. Another said, cross-burning lowers blood pressure. I did the test myself. Now, one of the cops apparently went to his kid's school and noticed that there were black educators there, or black parents there, I'm sorry. And he said something along the lines of, oh, I see some blacks here. I'm keeping my eye on them, don't worry. So, lots of racist stuff.
They're in the PTA, shut up. God.
It's just incredible because you do stories like this, and you talk about situations like what occurred in Ferguson or what happened with Eric Garner, and you'll still get people who are like, race has nothing to do with it. Nothing. You just have some cops texting each other about burning black people or...
And they would say that they're not, and they say they're not racist. They're just blowing up steam.
They're blowing up steam.
One of my favorite comedians years ago is Patrice O'Neill, and he was a touring comedian for a number of years. And he said, "I've met a lot of people. I've never once met a racist." That's a great point. Nobody thinks they are, even if they're sending around pictures of Obama as a chimpanzee or something like happened in Ferguson. Like this terrible stuff happens. They will never convince them let alone anyone else who doesn't have their internal frame of mind that they're racist.
Right, so the defense attorney is saying that they aren't racist. The only reason why they sent these texts to one another is because this is how they blow off steam. Now, it's interesting. When I blow off steam, I'll go to a yoga class or maybe go for a run. I might cry, right? But the first thing that happens is, the first thing that doesn't happen,
by the way.
I don't think to myself, like, oh, you know, those damn black people. That doesn't come to mind because I'm not racist.
Yeah.
Racist people think about those things.
Yeah.
Now, anyway.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No.
Well, I'm saying, like, look, a lot of people are probably thinking, well, you know, if I think about my own job, we do tell inappropriate jokes. That's true. And even here, we tell inappropriate jokes. We even sometimes get into semi-racial stuff about the groups that people are in the conversation are in. Like, we like to joke about ourselves, for instance, and stuff like that. But there are important distinctions. One, we're not cops.
Yeah, and
if you're a cop, you will be held to a different standard. That's why we let you shoot people. Along with that is some responsibility. You can't just say any crazy thing that pops in your head. Especially don't write it down, moron. Anyone can just, here's the text that I put. Like, it's still in there.
It's amazing.
It's so stupid.
So one of the officers under investigation, Michael Robinson, a 23-year veteran, has resigned while two of his colleagues have been reassigned to non-public contract positions. Now, it's likely that his colleagues could also get fired based on how the outcome of this investigation is. But District Attorney George Gascon said his office will review all the officers' cases going back 10 years because they're concerned that these, you know, hateful tendencies the cops have might actually have a negative impact on the way that they deal with cases.
Yeah.
Now, Michael Robinson, who is the 23-year veteran who just resigned, was one of the cops who was not only sending the racist tweets, he was also sending homophobic tweets, which is crazy because in the mid-90s, he appeared on the cover of The Advocate, which is a well-known gay publication. Let's take a look at that.
Oh, wow. When you see it in color, it actually sells the concept a little bit more. Wait, is that well known? I didn't actually know about that. Is that a San Francisco thing?
I don't know. Oh, The Advocate? I don't know where I heard of it, but I've known about it for a while.
I thought the question at the top, by the way, was, will the Clinton sex scandal derail gay rights? Interesting question. It's interesting to be put back in that 90s point of view.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
So this has created a real concern on the part of the community. This is Tony Brass, who is Michael Robinson's attorney. This has created a real concern on the part of the community, which is understandable. As an openly gay police officer, Mike Robinson well understands what it is like to be victimized by bigotry. He is very remorseful for any comments he made that would cause that type of hurt to anyone. He should have taken that into consideration before sending these texts to his colleagues.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I mean, look, a lot of people can get away with doing pretty much anything in their private life, their private communication, but we hold the police to a different standard. Police, sometimes politicians, but not even them necessarily. The people that we give great power to also have responsibility. Those go hand in hand, I heard it somewhere.
Yeah. All right, we do have some good news today, so let's get to that. The founder of a very well-known revenge porn site has just been sentenced to 18 years in prison after an investigation revealed that he was guilty of extortion. Now, this is a case involving a 27-year-old by the name of Eric Bollert, and he would somehow access nude the images of many women, and he would post it on the website along with personal information on these women. So where they work, their address, how to reach them. And so the women would get victimized by random strangers on the internet. And then on top of that, they would either lose their jobs, they would get disowned by family members, their entire lives were just completely ruined. So they would contact Kevin Bollert and they would beg him to please take the pictures down. And what did he do? He basically directed them to a different website and told them that he would take the pictures down if they agreed to pay him a specific amount of money. Now, Bollert was convicted of 21 counts of identity theft and 6 counts of extortion in connection with his website, yougotposted.com, which posted nude photographs of people with personal identifying information without their consent. People who approached Bollert to have their intimate photos removed from the site were directed to changemyreputation.com and charged between $250 and $350. He's believed to have collected some $30,000 from the victims.
ChangeMyReputation.com. That is a scumbag. Jesus.
So we did the story of, why am I forgetting his name?
Moore?
Hunter Moore. We did the Hunter Moore story, and he was the founder of Is Anyone Up? And he just got sentenced to prison because he was actually hacking into people's emails and then posting these pictures. Now, in some states, like California, posting these pictures to cause emotional distress and posting these pictures without consent from the woman could actually lead to prison time. It's not true of all states, but California is one of the states that does this. But for the states that don't have specific laws on the books yet, they find clever ways to catch these guys. So with Hunter Moore, he did hacking. That's illegal. So they caught him on that. With this guy, they caught him with extortion.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that these guys are finally paying the consequences for their actions.
Yeah. And if you're going to run a site like this, you're a dick, but only be a dick in this way. If you start being a dick in other ways, like extortion, that's when they can actually catch you. You have to be a double dick. And then they actually send you to prison.
Double dick.
I've heard. I didn't mean like that.
Sorry.
I've heard that there are certain kinds of criminals that get treated especially bad in prison, like pedophiles and things like that. I don't know where revenge porn site owner goes, but 18 years in prison is a long time.
Yeah, look, 18 years.
It's going to be rough.
It's going to be rough. And understand that these men are the bane of my existence.
Mm-hmm.
I despise these guys. But even then, regardless of how strong my bias is against them, I still think 18 years is a little excessive.
That's a long time.
That's a long time.
But again, I mean, they're talking about potential suicide attempts. Again, I think that like things that lead to people committing suicide, which we'll talk about a little bit later, are not necessarily directly connected. But I don't know. Look, so he deserves to go to jail. He's ruined lives and all that. But he's at best only one half of the equation. So we hear that people lose their jobs, they lose their relationships, and all that stuff.
Can I get into the details about that? So the publication of their explicit pictures caused the loss of jobs, damaged relationships, and led one to attempt suicide.
Yeah.
So lives do get ruined by this kind of stuff.
So, but here's the thing. So it does happen, and it's his fault, because he made the website, he specifically tried to hurt these people, but we could live in a society where he could steal all the naked pictures he wants, puts them online, and people could not be so horrible that they then ruin her life based on it.
Yep.
He can lead to it happening, but he can't make it happen. So I hope that at the same time we send guys like this to prison, we teach people that somebody being able to see you naked should not be the end of your life. And if you see someone naked, that doesn't mean that they're a bad person or an immoral person.
I totally agree.
Don't fucking fire them. Don't ruin their relationships so that their lives don't have to be ruined. It can still be a huge invasion of privacy, but for it to destroy a life, society has to be complicit. They have to be allied with the person who made it possible.
I really hope that we evolve in society to the point where it's not that big of a deal.
To be naked.
Someone took a naked picture, or took a picture in even a compromising position while they're naked, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't be a firing offense. Like, no one should think to themselves, oh my God, this person that I've employed has sex, and there's a record of it. I'm going to fire her. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
And look, I think that it has a negative impact on a lot of relationships, mine being one of them. Like, there's no way I'm sending my boyfriend a naked picture. There's no way.
I thought you meant already has had an effect on your life.
And we've had discussions about stuff like that, right? Yeah. It's like, what, you don't trust? No, I don't trust you. I don't trust anyone, because you hear these stories about women who are married, and then it turns out their husbands are posting shit like this, or their ex-husbands are posting stuff like this.
No woman has ever sent me a naked picture. That's probably why.
That's why.
That's probably why. You know what? By the way, that's a joke, but so while we have the laws to track down these sorts of guys and send them to jail, do they not have any sort of law that can outlaw firing someone because revenge porn of them has been leaked? How is that not protected?
That would be difficult to do, because then you're getting into the nitty-gritty of hiring and firing practices. But it is an interesting case to make, because an employer can't fire someone for being pregnant, and being pregnant is an indication that that individual had sex.
Yeah, so why be able to fire them because you see them getting pregnant?
Anyway,
all jokes aside, I want these people to be protected. That's the point that I'm making. Sorry.
Agreed. All right. A well-known plastic surgeon was found dead in his Miami home in an apparent suicide, and some are claiming that the show The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt had something to do with it. Now, the plastic surgeon in question is named Dr. Fran, who resizes rich women's toenails. Now, this is the guy in the show.
In the show.
Yes. Who resizes rich women's toenails and promises to reduce the main character's distinct scream lines. The plastic surgeon who just committed suicide is actually Dr. Frederick Brandt. Brandt had been devastated by Short's character and was suffering from depression. They're referring to Martin Short in the show.
Yeah. Wow, I was so shocked when I saw this today because I'm in the middle of watching the show. I've already seen the episode with this, and I don't know how many people would even get that they were parodying someone. I had no idea that the character, who seemed ridiculous at the time, was actually a sort of satire of a particular person. And I mean, as we're going to get into, I totally think that you should be free to satirize or parody pretty much anyone. And so I would not be one to say that Martin Short should feel responsible in any way, but I'm sure that he feels absolutely horrendous after this thing.
Yeah.
Involved in it in any way, even if it is someone who already had some depression problems, perhaps mental illness, that sort of thing. You can't help as a human but feel responsible.
Yeah, it's a scary situation because not everyone has thick skin, and if you're already dealing with depression or some sort of mental illness, any type of bullying or any type of roasting or any type of negative attention could set you off the edge, or throw you off the edge. But the reality is, you can't censor speech, and you can't tell people what they can and can't parody because of fear that someone might take their own lives. I don't think that this guy, first of all, these are all allegations. We don't know why he took his life.
We don't know. This is coming from friends.
This is coming from friends who say that he was devastated over the show. But again, you can't stop any type of creative expression out of fear that someone might harm themselves, right? And look, despite all the terrible things that people say on the internet, I don't like the idea of censoring speech on the internet because people have thin skin and they get their feelings hurt, right? It's ultimately up to you to either grow thick skin or find another way to cope with it. And so I'm not telling you guys that I think, oh, this guy should have just coped with it. He obviously had some issues. I think mental health care is the best way to deal with this kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, you hear stories like this and it's just sad.
Yeah, and look, I mean, like SNL, how many people do they parody every single week? Any one of those people could be set off. Like, we make fun of certain people all the time. Like, what if we found out that Chris Christie didn't like the fat jokes we occasionally say, or if I found out that Andre Tantaros, I know you're not involved in it, and I try not to be involved in it generally, but or if Andre Tantaros or Sean, like, there are people on Fox, or there are people in the media that we make fun of, and you can never know who is going to be set off by it. And Martin Short, in everything that I've ever seen him in my life, he seems like an awesome person, a super nice, but he has to feel some responsibility, even though I don't understand. I love the show. I don't even understand why they would mock a particular plastic surgeon. Maybe he's someone that people know, and it's just not a thing that my group would get, I guess. But also, it's a show that has received almost universal praise, and this is definitely going to tarnish its legacy that first season.
I know, it's unfortunate. All right, we got to take one more quick break. When we come back, the story I've been promising you, what was Chris Wallace saying about Kelly Clarkson, and why does it have me so upset? Stick around. back to the Young Turks. Just a few TYT lives for you before we get to the last story of the show today. So Sarah says, I've counseled a few women who have had revenge porn done to them and they suffer immensely, so he should have gotten longer, referring to the 18-year prison sentence. I hear you. 18 years is a long time. That's like a fifth of your life, more than a fifth of your life.
Yeah, it's the core of your adult life.
Yeah.
But look, he did it. It's not like he found pictures and put them up, not knowing. He knew that they were revenge porn, and then to extort them. That's an evil person.
Yeah. All right. Aggregate Gnome says, when Anna wants to blow off steam, she starts punching the TriCaster. That's why it struggles to function properly.
Wow, this guy knows a lot about the show. He knows the TriCaster and its problems. Wow.
Yes. And then John Blackman says, if anyone wants to send me naked pics, I promise not to take revenge at any point.
I'll send you one.
This is not me victim blaming, so please don't interpret it that way. Women do not send your naked pictures. Just don't. Just don't do it. It's not worth it.
What about naked
Believe me,
pics with
it's
no
tempting.
faces?
It's tempting, but just
It's tempting. You want to. It's like you look down and you think others must see this.
I mean,
Don't put the face in. How about that?
they're gonna find out.
Yeah, they are.
They're gonna know. Anyway, all right, last
Get
story.
naked in front of each other.
That's true. But then sometimes it's long distance, and it was like you're away at a business trip.
Well, they're gone. Get naked with someone else.
Good point. Good point. All right. Chris Wallace was on the Mike Gallagher show on Fox News, and they got into this discussion about pizza, which sounds like a totally benign discussion until they wandered off and started talking about Kelly Clarkson. Now, of course, offensive things were said. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, so go ahead and take a look at the video, and then we'll discuss.
I saw one the other day. I think it was for Little Caesars. I can't believe it. It was sausage and bacon, and it was deep dish, and on the edges of it, like on where the crust is, it was ringed in slices of bacon. So I mean,
That sounds good. I know
well, it did look good, but it also looked like it would kill you. It would look like you would eat that.
Don't fat shame me. You do a lot of fat shaming. That's the new phrase now, fat shaming. Have you seen Kelly Clarkson? Have you know the singer Kelly Clarkson? Holy cow, did she blow up?
Really? Do we want to talk about some of your friends?
Well, look at me. I got some weight issues. I can take a little bit of weight off.
About your friend?
That's funny. Yeah. Well, I like that he turned it around.
Yeah.
It's like you hang out with a lot of fat people.
Now, we didn't include it in the video, but later on, Chris Wallace said she could lay off the deep dish pizza for a little while.
Yeah, so he played along.
So he did play along after he turned it around on Gallagher and said, have you seen your friends?
Yeah.
That was such a pathetic conversation.
Didn't old school? Didn't they have a big conversation about pizza recently? Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. I like talking about pizza. I like talking about food that's unhealthy.
That's so funny that you mentioned old school talking about pizza. I don't know whether they did or not, but a conversation about pizza sounds so unbelievably lame to me. Like I can't believe anyone would want to tune in. Like, oh, what do they have to say about the Little Caesars deep dish?
Oh, you're talking about on-air conversations.
Yes.
I like talking about like food that's horrible for you, but not necessarily on air.
Yes.
The going from the pizza and how bad it is to Kelly Clarkson. Has there ever been a transition that made less sense? Where the fuck did Kelly Clarkson? It's Clarkson.
Yeah.
Where did she come from? What does she have to do with that?
You know what's so incredible? Kelly Clarkson is one of the few musical artists out there that actually genuinely has a great voice, right? She's very, very talented. And so many times I've heard conversations about her, and none of it has to do with her talent, and a huge chunk of it has to do with the way she looks. Oh, she lost weight. Oh, she gained weight. Oh, she blew up again. What's going on? Who cares? Who cares? Right? It's not important. And aren't we in like this age of loving curvier women? Why are we even concerned with this? And the thing is, Kelly Clarkson is jarring for people in the entertainment industry because she's one of the few women who actually does have curves and people are uncomfortable with it. Just move on. You don't need to like randomly bring her into this conversation. Yeah. It's so stupid.
Yeah, and both of those men are like 70 years old.
Yeah, dude, Chris
Wallace. Talk about somebody from your own generation.
Like, they both think that they look like supermodels. Are you fucking kidding me right now?
Like Chris Wallace, like when you grow up with that face and that body, you feel like you can mock anyone. And
he's got the immunity idol.
And you're just a dumbass. Like, see, now I'm doing the same thing. I'm mocking him. But why are you bringing... You shouldn't even know who she is. I barely know who she is. What does it matter how she looks? If you think she's too fat, okay, use that information the next time she comes up to you and says, I want to take you out. Then say no because she's too fat. Other than that, it shouldn't matter to you. It doesn't make any sense for you to care or even to know. It's a little bit creepy. I want to know why she was on your mind in the first place. Or maybe I don't want to know.
He has since apologized, okay, but Kelly Clarkson also released a statement about this. She says, I love that people think this topic is new. Like, welcome to the past 13 years. I yo-yo. Sometimes I'm more fit, and I get into kickboxing and hardcore, and then sometimes I don't go and go, nope, I'd rather have wine. I hear you, sister.
That sounds like a quote from X-Ray, actually. You know what? Wine sounds good now.
Yeah, no, I had a donut today, and I sent Christian a text message, and I was like, I'm going to need you to tap back into the 2010 Lopi, who was into thick women, because that's the look I'm going to go for. Anyway.
She gained 30 pounds off of that donut.
Whatever.
She yo-yos. Sometimes she has a donut, sometimes she's super healthy for almost her entire life, like right now.
Anyway.
Oh, the weird guilt.
All right, guys. Well, that does it for the second hour today. John, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are going to have a post-game show for our members, so stick around for that. And for everyone else, have an awesome night. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.